It's time to talk Carolina football. There are 3 teams left in my 10 and 20-minute NFL team series. 3 teams in the NFC South. And for Carolina, they're looking up at their 3 divisional rivals. And I apologize to start off with any negativity to anybody who's listening who's a Carolina fan, because last season didn't go that well and there weren't a lot of positive factors that came into play. In fact, I started my draft analysis this past season by saying, well, at least no one was hit by a flying saucer. So all things can only go and move up right now. If you look back at their stat sheet from last year, Bryce Young didn't have a good year. Let's face it. And there were coaching changes, a new coach to start the year, and Frank Reich, then he was fired. So he underwent a lot of changes. There'll be more changes this year with a new staff. But he's not the first quarterback to go through growing pains in his first year. Some awfully great quarterbacks throughout the years had rough first seasons. Peyton Manning threw a ton of interceptions to start his career. Troy Aikman, I think Dallas won 1 game to start his career. So anything's possible. There's good news. Bryce Young can get better. He got his feet wet. Obviously, the season didn't end very well because they didn't even score the last 2 weeks. So Dave Canales comes in. He had a good track record with Tampa Bay. He worked wonders with Baker Mayfield. That team, Tampa Bay, possibly overachieved offensively, even without a strong running attack. Carolina has a better running attack than Tampa, so they have that right off the bat. As usual, we'll be talking about free agency, the draft, hit and misses, needs that are left unfilled. Then there are going to be some with Carolina, their divisional and season win outlook, and my final thoughts as they go through baby steps in 2024. So this is the draft. My top needs: 2 offensive linemen, a pass rusher. Remember, Brian Burns is gone. Originally, they could have traded him for a lot. They could have got a lot more draft capital. Let's just say that to begin with. And instead, unfortunately, they, looking back at my notes, 2nd and a 5th round choice they got from the New York Giants. The Rams offered them a couple of first year previous. So they're going to be without their best pass rusher via trade. That's why pass rusher is up there. Tight end is a need. All young quarterbacks need good tight ends. Carolina was deficient in this area. 2 defensive backs. And the reason I write defensive backs here is because in the offseason, not only did they lose a tight end, Hurst, they lost 3 linebackers. They lost 3 defensive backs in addition to Brian Burns. They added a couple of offensive linemen, Hunt and Lewis, complementary parts, but they still need that stud offensive lineman, in my opinion. They may only have 1 right there. They have 2 needs still on the offensive line. They added Jadeveon Clowney. That's a good addition as well. And they have a couple of other players, complementary pieces that will help them. But I think there's been a net loss in free agency, and certainly a net loss if you're talking about losing Brian Burns. I'm not down on Xavier Levitt, but I did not give him a first-round grade. In fact, I barely gave him a straddling 2nd and 3rd round grade. He was my 12th rated wide receiver. He does have kick return skills, and that's important in this new era of kick returns being more important. But wide receiver is not on my top 4 need list. So basically, I'm not happy with that. Jonathan Brooks is an outstanding runner, either rated number 1 or number 2 on anybody's board, mostly number 1, slight number 2 for me. He's an excellent runner, but this was not an issue for Carolina. They can run the football. They have run the football, even though he'll probably be the lead back and be a very, very good player. They could have drafted in another position here. I would have thought O-line edge 1-2-2-1 would have been absolutely the way to go. So I think they got 2 good players. Leggett's going to start. 3rd round, late 2nd round wide receiver draft choices. That's not bad. Brooks, a really good running back. That's not bad, but it didn't meet their needs. They could have gotten other players at those positions that they really wanted to add to those positions. So I'm disappointed in their approach. Wallace at linebacker. This is the third position that's not on my need board. So again, we have a problem. I do like Sanders. He just looks so smooth on the field. He was in a loaded wide receiver, tight end, running back array of talent at the University of Texas, who obviously went to the Final Four last year in the NCAA. I thought Sanders excelled. He did not test that well, so he dropped. He went 72nd overall. I had him in the range of 55 to 70. Before his testing, I would have had him as a little bit higher in the 40 to 50 range. So I dropped him as well, but I still think there's value and need hit value with this pick. I think Sanders is an excellent addition for this team. Complementary defensive back in round 5. I don't have a problem with that. My only problem is I rated him lower than a 5th round pick. So I don't see a lot of value with any of their picks other than Brooks. I had him properly rated, and I had Sanders rated as a 55 to 70. My biggest problem with Carolina, unfortunately, is that my need board didn't hit their need board. So I think they still need to do a better job protecting Bryce Young. Remember, a lot of sacks. They allowed a lot of sacks last year. So I don't think they got better in that particular area. Maybe the coaching staff will be better in that area. Maybe Canales will help them. And even though he's the head coach, he will be involved in the offense. They kept the same defensive coordinator, which is good for continuity. Unfortunately, they lost a lot of bodies in the defense, so he has a little bit less to work with. So I think they could have done better on the offensive line. I think they could have done better at pass rusher. I think they could have done better at the defensive back position. That's my problem. They added good players, but they didn't fix holes. I'm looking at their numbers. We're talking 5.5 for their win total. That was steamed up. It started about 4.5. I personally think they're about a 5-12 team. So I thought 4.5 a little too low, 5.5 maybe a little too high. To me, no value with the 5.5. Plus 1,100 to win the division. It's not that Tampa, New Orleans, and Atlanta are outstanding teams, but they all have better overall talent and better overall quarterback play than does Carolina. So I think the plus 1,100 is a little short. So I have no plays on Carolina as far as their division or season win total. I think this is about taking baby steps and maybe hopefully fixing their holes in the future rather than adding to their holes. Their schedule as a whole, bye week is a little late. It's week 11 for their bye week. You know how I feel about that. New coaches need bye weeks, preferably in between weeks 5 and 7 or 8. So they won't have a lot of adjustments to make. Good continuity of schedule because they have no prime time games. They do have a game out of the country, I believe. Checking that to make sure. But they play in Germany against the New York Giants. But other than that, a very favorable Sunday schedule where they don't have to get out of rhythm. No primetime games. Games 5 to 8 are games against new quarterbacks. Bryce Young is second-year quarterback. They'll be playing at Chicago. They'll be playing at Washington. They'll be playing at Denver. Potentially 3 new quarterbacks. They're all on the road, though. So those rookie quarterbacks will all be at home. So in looking at my final thoughts for this team, the offense needs Bryce Young to develop. I don't care that he had a rotten first year. That's not a problem for me. A lot of teams have bad first year quarterbacks. He can grow. Canales can grow him. So I'm just throwing out the week 1 and hoping that things get better in terms of what happens in week 2, and the offense needs him to grow. Schedule continuity is a plus. They also play a couple of teams where there may be letdown situations. So maybe they cover it against the spread. Maybe they pull off an upset win. There's a couple of teams they're going to play off short weeks because they're more prime time type teams, or they're going to play them off a tense rivalry game or a revenge game. So Carolina has some help in terms of the schedule. Draft was inconclusive. Good players selected, but they missed 3 of my 4 key needs. The talent gap, I think too much to overcome for the new staff. I think Carolina's going to miss the playoffs. I know some people are bullish on them. And again, the NFC South is not a fantastic division. But Carolina is going to go through some growing pains because I think they're going to be a little bit weaker defensively. And I think Bryce Young, unless the offense, new offensive line coach, the new head coach, the new coordinator, they can scheme Bryce Young away from pressure. The offensive line's not going to be good enough. And again, the defense lost some bodies. So not a really ringing endorsement of Carolina. But I think overall, as long as we see progress this year and they hit their needs in draft 2025, maybe they make that slow growth, win 5 or 6 games, and get better as the season wears on. Only 2 teams left, and that's New Orleans and Tampa. I will be previewing them late tomorrow afternoon. Please tune in for those last 2 teams that I'm going to do in this ambitious 32-team series. All my videos are on YouTube. Thanks for watching this Carolina preview, and I will see you back tomorrow with New Orleans and with the Tampa Bay